Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Let me make some observations on what I think is likely to be a fairly consensual debate. We're all travelling in the same direction, and I think that's a good place to be. Forestry, of course, has always been a strategic product. In 1511, when the Great Michael was launched, it was the biggest capital ship in the world, weighing 1,000 tonnes. It was 73 metres long, and it required the clearing of every single tree in Fife and the importation of timber from the Baltics and indeed from France. So timber in the 16th century was playing an important part in national life, and of course required a huge replanting programme following the building of the Great Michael. And of course, when the Forestry Commission was founded by the Act of 1919, it was in the aftermath of World War I, which had 40,000 kilometres of trenches in France, which were largely lined by timber. And the percentage of the UK that was then covered by forestry has dropped to something in the order of 4%. So therefore, timber is not simply an amenity, it's not even simply something that feeds our industry, it is a matter of strategic interest. It's worth saying that in 1919, in one of the debates in the House of Commons, one of the Labour members, Will Thorne, in addressing the issue of where the land would be found to plant trees, because that was an issue then as it is now, he simply said, "Pinch it, take it over." I think we've got a little more sophisticated in our approach since then. But nonetheless, it is a substantial issue. Where is the land to come from? I welcome very much hearing Peter Chapman, and I agree with him in this, that we need to find ways of showing farmers that there is an intrinsic value to them, to their businesses, in making some of their land available for forestry. I personally have some interest in using forests for shelter. I think farmers in some circumstances will find that it's useful for that. I say that because where we live, we are surrounded on three sides by tree, and it would be pretty open to the elements if we were not surrounded by trees. They're also an amenity for us. In the forest that surrounds us, we have foxes, roe deers, badgers, weasels, barn owls, buzzards, woodpeckers, and a whole raft of other things. And that's true of forests across Scotland, across the UK. So as a national asset, they are something that's of interest to everyone, not simply to the proper industrial interests of bodies like Confor, but to everyone who benefits emotionally, practically and economically. For those of us like myself who enjoy walking, forests are among the most attractive places to go walking, provided that is there are forest trails. The bit of forest around me is an example of the errors that can be made in the past. The forest paths through there are all but overgrown. The forest has never been thinned. I think the person who planted it, and I'm not quite sure who it was, by the way, I think, and that addresses the point that Mr Whiteman made, the person who planted it basically took the money and run. It will cost more to take that forest down than it is likely to realise in economic benefit. So the management of forests is very important indeed. And that's why I very much welcome Jim McKinnon's report on forestry. I think it's well informed and well researched. Jim is an excellent fellow with only one major defect to his name. He is a supporter of forest mechanics. And how sad is that, one has to say. I think it's Forest Mechanics Cabinet Secretary. I'm pretty sure it is. I apologise, Jim, if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's correct. But in Scotland, we have beautiful land and we have opportunities for planting more forestry. I think Rhoda Grant was correct in saying we've got to plant it where we can harvest it. The one thing she missed, and I would have liked to intervene, was that there is opportunity in some places for marine removal of forestry as well. And I saw a very effective scheme of that when I visited Rarcy to open the new pier there as a minister. I think it was probably the last time I met Charles Kennedy, and we had an excellent chat together, as we always did whenever we met him. The number of jobs in forestry can go up. It's substantial already, because the number of uses to which we're putting forest products is increasing. It's now part of biomass. More of our houses are timber framed, and therefore it's important that we have access to a ready supply of forestry goods. And climate change, yes, of course, particularly new plantings, because young trees are particularly adept at absorbing CO2, whereas older established forests that are left to moulder, perhaps as the one that surrounds our house, are less adept at absorbing CO2. So we've got to make sure we replant after we grant permission for forests to come down. The final thing, Presiding Officer, is, of course, I welcomed last week the assent from the Tory benches, from Mr Chapman, that our share of the support for agriculture and forestry would remain the same after 2020. I want to see that delivered, because that's important for this industry, as for rural Scotland as a whole. Presiding Officer.